I think we should get cracking. So welcome again. And firstly, I'm just going to give a quick introduction to Charity Digital. We are a registered UK charity, and our mission is to help other charities to increase their impact and to be more digital. And we do this through two main activities: providing access to software products charities need at dramatically reduced prices, and publishing content, articles, podcasts, videos, and running webinars and events, just like one that you're on today, that educate the charity professionals and volunteers on how to make better use of your digital tools and technologies. Now, we are very proud to say that we've helped over 1 million charity professionals learn about charity transformation and improve their digital skills through our content, our website, our events, our training programs, and we've enabled a staggering 77,000 charities to save in excess of 284 million on technology investments. So we're pretty proud of that. And in today's session, it's sponsored by Sage Intacct, and we will be, well, it won't be me, but our lovely guests on here, our speakers, will be discussing how to improve your financial management. This session will share details of how to safeguard sensitive financial information across various systems, how to overcome the core challenges of integrating financial technology, and practical examples of how charities successfully used financial technology to enhance their operations. So I'm just going to be handing over in a few seconds' time to Duncan Wyeth and Hobby Dean. And I just want to, just before I do that, I just want to share a few house rules and pointers for our session today. Now, it is being recorded and this will be uploaded for you to watch on demand within a week's time. The slides, together with other resources, will also be made available to you by the end of today, hopefully. So don't worry if we have missed anything at all. Now, your closed captions are available for today's session. And if you don't know how to enable these, just go to the bottom of your Zoom window and just click on the little arrow up at the button up at the top to close captions that show subtitle. Now, during the webinar, please feel free to ask lots of questions, or the questions that you want, in the Q&A section of the Zoom, which is down at the bottom for our panelists to address at the end of their presentation. And also, please feel free to share any other comments or experiences or your top tips in the chat section that you might have as well. If there is a particular question in the Q&A section that you would like to be answered, you can upvote this question for it to be answered first. So it just jumps the queue. And finally, if we do encounter any sound or image issues, just let us know in the chat and we will do our very best to get the session back to normal as soon as we can. So I'm now going to pop my camera off and my audio, and I'm going to hand over to our lovely guest speakers. Thank you very much. I think Duncan and Hobby, you're having a slight difficulty unmuting yourself, aren't you? Could you just give it a click your end, because we're not able to do it our end, if that would be fantastic. Hopefully without changing the slide order that you've got there. Please bear with us. We will be operational very soon. There we go. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Let's go back to sharing.
Just bear with us a second. Right. Can you still hear us okay?
Yes, that's perfect. Please go ahead.
Excellent.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Right. So My name's Hobby. I'm a senior solutions consultant here at Sage. I've got over 30 years experience of working with financial systems, and most of those years are also including some element of integration. And I'd like to hand over to Duncan.
My name's Duncan Wyeth. I've been in the accounting and accounting systems marketplace for far too long, best part of 40 years. I'm an ex-accountant, and I spent the last probably 4 or 5 years now specifically focusing on integration of business applications with a leaning towards getting the finance systems right. So that's my background.
Thanks, Duncan. So what we want to do is start moving into why is the right integrations and why does it matter? I think it's obvious to all of us why we typically want to work on integrations, because the whole idea is about facilitating making those right decisions based on comprehensive data rather than having to go into data silos across the organisation. And I think a key part of that is looking at our digital transformation as organisations, because you can't integrate things if they're in such obscure places. You actually need to look at how to bring that data together, because ultimately that's going to try and deliver consistency for you. So you are comparing apples and apples rather than apples and pears. It's about automating that process as well, streamlining it, delivering you efficiencies, productivity. And the idea is because you're bringing everything together in a sensible and the right way, hopefully you should see a reduction in costs, less overhead in having resources trying to get them and massage the data into the right structure. Hopefully removing silos, and obviously make it obvious where you're missing data, because one of the things I can guarantee you when you're talking about integration projects, you just suddenly find out that data is missing in one area that wasn't even recognized in the other area. Practical example I had a few years ago was somebody had a HR system of 25 staff, but the payroll, funnily enough, was paying over 30 staff. So you do get things like that coming across. And also by bringing that data together, it's trying to give you more insights, maybe insights you never had. Duncan, from your perspective, what's your thoughts?
I think I'd kind of bring it back to the beginning slightly. And you mentioned digital transformation. It's a buzzword in the industry at the moment, and the IT industry, let's face it, creates its own buzzwords on a regular basis. Digital transformation, what is it? Let's start there. It's the use of computers and technology to transform a business and remove the mundane tasks. So what is it? It's better use of computers and technology. Why is it important? And I think today more than ever it's becoming important. There was a recent study done by DocuSign, and without carrying out a poll at this point, I think everybody involved in this call today will have had some exposure to DocuSign, and they have replaced the pen. They've just removed the pen completely. It's the world's best case of digital transformation. We no longer sign a piece of paper, we sign an electronic document. So when they look at digital transformation and the impact of technology, I'm going to sit up and listen. And the most important result for me from their recent study of European businesses said, if you don't transform digitally, if you are not digitally aware, then the biggest risk to your business is staff. People will leave their job if they feel that they are doing mundane tasks. People today want to be valued in their job. They want to do things that deliver value. And possibly for me, the most important thing with digital transformation as a whole is keeping your staff happy, because if you keep your staff happy, they'll serve your business longer. So they'll be in your organization longer and deliver more value to you. And there's a whole host of studies, but anybody that's interested, please dig it out online. It's the DocuSign Digital Transformation Survey, and it's, I think, their European survey for 2023. But if you want it, drop me an email afterwards and I can get you a copy of it. It does look into the whole benefit of digital transformation and why people want to get more out of their job. So that's really why I think it's important. You're going to retain your staff. You do get rationalization of data, obviously, and you get reduced effort. But let's not lose sight of the people in this. Keeping your staff happy is far more important.
Yeah, I would agree. I think your staff have got that insight as well that, you know, you can't computerize, so it's really important to bring that on board as well. Okay, so let's start looking at some of the pitfalls to consider when thinking about planning financial integration. So one of the first pitfalls, again, is about failing to set and manage expectations and requirements. So one of the things I want to do is we're going to put out a poll that you can just answer in the background to talk about whether you as an organisation have a trading on, because that also is going to lead to why we're asking this question in the integration forum. So whilst that's going up, one of the things I wanted to say is I think failing to set and manage expectations is absolutely important. I think in my job role, I often come across people that want to be one or two systems. It's always a CRM system, whether it's Razor's Edge, Thank You, or one of the established ones. It's always linking into some e-commerce system as well. And when you talk to people about, you know, how do they want the things to be integrated, you get such a varied response from, well, I just want the two to talk to each other. Exactly what does that mean? You know, do you where do the customers sit? Where's the golden record of where the suppliers sit and where the products sit that you're going to be serving as well? And again, a lot of the systems that are out there right now do a basic integration of CSVs. But from your point of view, Duncan, having done so many of these, how do you help customers manage expectations and requirements?
It's the slide on the screen there is really good. It's a journey. It is about understanding where you are, and it's about understanding where you want to be. Okay. And I'll use a little anecdote for that. I'm currently in central London. And let's suppose for a moment I'm in central London and I wanted to go to, let's say, New York. How do I get there? Easy enough. Buy a plane ticket. That's it. London to New York via any one of a number of airlines. Except that's not it, because I'm actually in a very tall building in central London. So I've got to get from my very tall building to the airport, which involves various forms of transport, including walking, possibly a taxi, a tube, a train. I've got to go home and pack in the middle of all of this and then get to the airport in a car. And when I get to that airport and get on that plane, it will take me to New York. But when I get to New York, I'm still not where I want to be, because New York's a big place and I've got to get to Central Park, and that involves a taxi, and it involves possibly a train journey, and it involves getting to another hotel and unpacking and then getting to Central Park. So it's the detail. The devil is in the detail. Manage those expectations, document everything from the beginning. Where are we? Where do we want to go? And managing the unknown. You don't really know where you want to go until you know what you're capable of. So set small goals. If you're integrating your CRM system to your accounting system, start by integrating the basic information. Let's take an individual's details from the CRM system into the accounting system and create an invoice that we're going to pay, or an invoice that will be paid. That simple integration is the starting point. Then build on it, but get those building blocks right. Get the foundations right. Document your journey and document every method of transport you're going to use on that journey. Because if you don't, you'll find yourself in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Oh, that's really important, because, as you said, taking those small steps is vital, because if you're trying to eat the whole elephant, you can lose sight of the whole message. So
yeah. Don't boil the ocean, right? That's the key thing. Don't boil the ocean.
And how do you find you coach clients? Do you find it's easy when people are coming to you to sort of say, hey, Duncan, I need this to integrate to this? Do some of them know what they want, or do you find you have to coach them back as well?
It's a bit of both, and it is coaching. That's exactly the right word. It's helping people understand the art of the possible, and understand the data that they want to move and the data that they have to move. Two different things.
I agree, and I think sometimes when I've been involved in some of those discussions, there's been a lot of scope creep as well, because they get excited at the prospect. Oh, do you mean I could do this? You could do this, and it's like, hang on, be careful. Let's tackle that immediate problem, and not necessarily worry about scope creep as well.
You can do that. Should you do it? Do you need to do it?
Yeah, you can. And do you kind of help? We talked about coaching. Do you help you're saying earlier about doing little bits and managing those little bits. So is it worth setting goals on those little individual bits that you're having them working on? And what should goals look like?
Again, I come back to the journey. It's about understanding that to get from where we are today to where we want to be, we've got to leave one place and move on. You set milestones, and those little pieces are individual milestones on that journey. Don't, as you said, don't boil the ocean. Don't start by saying I have to integrate everything tomorrow. Have a plan, have a journey, do the stuff that you have to do now, do the things that you need to do now, and then move on to the things that you want to do. And when you start looking at things that you want to do, ask yourself, do you have to do them?
That makes logical sense. Okay. And would you ever have a situation where you need to pull the plug? It's just not working. And what are those? What does that look like?
There are many. It doesn't just have to be integration projects. There are many IT projects that have gone wrong. Understanding when it's going wrong, and then being able to change direction is one thing, and that's just from constantly reviewing where you are at on your journey. And sometimes you do have to pull the plug. Sometimes you have to say, look, we got this journey wrong. We took the wrong route. We've come across a bridge that's been blown up, so we just got to turn around and go back. And that usually comes at the point where you're in the planning stage. Hopefully it's not going to come post planning, but when you're in the planning stage and going, hang on a minute, this software is not able to integrate with this software for whatever reason.
I think that's really important.
We'll touch on that a bit later.
Yeah, no problem. So moving on to the second point, obviously you're thinking about this integration, but it's about leaving your system sensitive information vulnerable. I think this is important for so many reasons. And I think people shouldn't assume that all systems offer the same level of security and protection. And I think I'm personally worried because obviously I work in the not-for-profit area, and it's the flavour of the month to attack charities right now. There's over 500,000 daily attacks just on charities on the small to medium. And obviously that's impacting on data protection and GDPR rules and things like that. So how do you factor this in when you are trying to do these integrations?
The first thing is to take into account the method of integration. So from a pure integration point, any application or tool that you use to pass data from one system to another will use one of a number of methods to extract and send that data. Now, since integration first started, the most common form is export-import. And that's typically done using CSV files, XML files, whatever format, but a file is generated by one system, it is stored in a location and then imported into a second system. So just be aware, if you're looking at file transfer as an integration methodology, be aware that these days a lot of those files are stored on what used to be called FTP servers, so file transfer protocol, which is typically a server somewhere in the cloud that you're going to stick your data on and it's going to get read from that server to another system. Don't use FTP, use SFTP, because the S means it's secure. Even if it is secure, don't leave the data there. Once it's been used, delete it. And a good integration system will be able to read a file from an SFTP server, and once it's processed that file, delete the file, or at least move it to a secure or more secure environment. So don't leave your data there. Try and avoid systems, and there are some still in operation that use a staging database where they don't use an SFTP server. They basically write the data from one system into a database, again, in the cloud or on a server somewhere. But that data gets absorbed, it gets ingested, it gets stored, and then it gets processed and written onto where it wants to go. And in some cases, it can just reside in that database for a long time. Use what's effectively a pass-through system. Use a system where the data is ingested and it's pulled directly from an API or from what they call a webhook, which is just a direct feed into a system. It gets ingested, it gets processed, it gets written out, And when that write out is successful, when the data has been created in the target system, the data no longer exists. It just passes through. And a good pass-through system will only store data where there is an error, and it will only store it for reporting purposes. So there are a couple of things you want to look at. If you are using CSV transfer or XML transfer, it's very difficult to encrypt that data. So it's got to be put somewhere where nobody's going to be able to see it. And just apply a bit of common sense. Use as much as possible some of the modern security tools out there. It's a product I don't think anybody may have heard of it. A product called Dark Trace, that's one of the fastest growing in that sector. Uses AI to understand what your systems look like and spot the differences. It's a really powerful piece of kit. But just be aware when you're moving data, there are vulnerabilities, and make every effort, take every step to make sure that data is protected. And that means don't leave it lying around in the cloud where somebody might just pick it up and move on with it. It's a really key point. Don't leave your systems vulnerable.
Okay. And just to bring that point home, don't forget, if people do hack into that, don't forget, for data breaches, you can be fined quite a significant amount of money.
Oh, yeah.
So that itself will make sure you keep your data secure. It's usually a percentage of your turnover. So just be mindful of that as well. Next bit, where, some of the problems that people get with integration is about, I've got to have everything I know into this system, and, I've got to replicate this into that, etc. When we spoke about this before, you had some experience with this with two systems. Do you want to elaborate?
Yeah, this is, for me, this is one of the key points with a good integration project. And as my grandmother used to say to me, don't over egg the pudding, hobby. I said earlier, do the stuff you need to do when you need to do it. Don't get overexcited. When I talk to people and I try and open their eyes up to the art of the possible, and they learn the art of the possible and get really excited. Oh, if I can do that, I can do this. Great. And they run off and they do all these great things. And they come back with a design document that says, this is what we want to do. And you go, right, okay. You don't really need all of that, do you? So always question the benefit and the value of what you are proposing to do. Okay. Don't create an integration workflow. And you'll hear the word workflow a lot in integration projects, and one workflow moves a set of data from point A to point B. So don't create lots of workflows that move data for no good reason. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, don't put lots of data in those workflows that you don't need. So, for example, if you look at a CRM system, if you look at the underlying database of that CRM system, there'll be lots and lots of fields in there that are really important, because without them, the CRM system won't work. They don't mean anything to the end user. So don't transfer the data that has no meaning. Take the really key stuff that you need, and avoid automation for the sake of automation, because what can happen if you just do stuff because you can end up with what's called a cyclical workflow or cyclical workflows. So a good example, we had a case not so long ago where we were taking data from a CRM system and we were putting that data into a payment system that was used to actually pay the grants that the charity was paying out. We were updating the CRM system, updating the finance system. And then they wanted the finance system to update the CRM system. Now, the reason they were talking to us was because they'd previously gone through this process and things weren't working very well. And they weren't working very well because when you sat down and looked at what they were doing was going, update CRM, CRM updates the payment system updates the finance system updates the CRM system updates the payment system, which updates the finance system, which updates the CRM system, which we're just going around in circles here, guys. That's why it's not working. So, look at the process. Ask yourself, does this process have to work in this fashion? What we actually ended up doing was taking the data from the CRM system and updating the payment system and the finance system in a single workflow. So it was one workflow updating 2 target systems. So just be aware that people get carried away with this stuff. You know, if I can do that, I will do that, and then I'll do even more with it. Don't create workflows that don't deliver value, and really focus on the value word every time. Is this going to deliver value to the business? Do I need to process that granular level of data? You know, another good example, a payroll system integration. A client of ours used a third party to integrate their payroll system to their general ledger. They ran it once, and they ran it once in UAT, and about 6 people in accounts had access to that UAT process. And when they ran it, everybody could actually see how much everybody on the payroll had been paid that month, because they posted the transactional data at a granular level that showed the employee and all the directors and their salary, which you can imagine didn't go down very well. So think about it, rationalize it, do what is needed, and don't over-egg the pudding. You know, don't put too much data in there. Take what you need.
I have to admit, I think that's a lot easier now. People get that concept, where I can go back even as recent as 3-4 years ago, where no, I've got to have that because I don't get access to that other system. I think the key thing is if it's got to have some value to it. There's no value in duplicating data. It serves no purpose to anybody at all.
None at all.
So, okay, number 4, missing the complete picture by only seeing the money. I find this quite interesting in the sense that very often organisations will only integrate the finance system and financial values. But certainly in the not-for-profit world, you could have a situation where it looks fantastic. You've had £100,000 worth of donations, but the reality is it was actually only one donor. So it's like, well, hang on, aren't you therefore at risk? So I think when you're putting financial data to, when you're making these plans and seeing the complete picture, there's more attributes here than just the money. What other information from your perspective do you think people need to start bringing in here?
I think, again, it's stepping away from the project itself, an integration project, and it's asking yourself the question, why are we doing this? Okay. And typically for any organization, but not for profits in particular, it's about getting clarity of data, and being able to move that data through the organization to drive better decisions. Okay. Your CEO, Steve Hare, recently gave a speech where he talked about how sports people make really good decisions. The audience was very confused because we're all sat there thinking, what's this got to do with finance software? But he was actually talking about the importance of data in those decisions. And his analogy was really good. The hours and hours spent on the training field meant that they were able to make those decisions under pressure with the available information very quickly. Now, no amount of financial data is going to provide benefit without the statistical data behind it. So things like headcount, you know, I've seen companies ignore headcount when they're doing integration and reporting projects. But the key thing is to look at what data you need in order to make those decisions, and focus outside of the finance team, focus on the statistical data, number of units sold from an e-commerce system. If you're looking at an organization with multiple branches, activity within those branches, being able to analyze the data, and pulling all of that analysis in. And again, in terms of where things go wrong, we're often asked to integrate 2 systems, and we look at the data that they want to move, and the data might exist in the target system, but they've ignored it in the past because there's nowhere for it to go. It exists in the originating system, but there's nowhere for it to go in the target system. So make sure you have that joined up data structure. Make sure you've got commonality of data between the systems you're integrating. And if you haven't got commonality of data, find a way of moving the data from one field to another. An example would be in one system, let's say you've got a donor number in your Razor's Edge system, so you've got a donor ID, and you're trying to post that donor ID to a transaction in your accounting system, but there's nowhere for the donor ID to go. Or there is a field that you can put the donor ID in, but one's an alphanumeric field and the other one's just a numeric field. So you have to have that commonality. And that's really about looking at the data structure, looking at the data format, and also looking at the statistical data, the non-financial data behind these decisions. So, as I said, quantity sold, region, location, all of that kind of rich statistical data, analytical data that you want to capture at its point of origin and move that into the system you're going to do your primary reporting and forecasting from.
I think that's really important because right now ESG is really important, and a lot of that carbon footprint materials are being captured in a different system.
Absolutely.
So you need to find somewhere to host it in your finance system.
I'm really pleased you brought this up, because yesterday I spent the best part of an hour on the phone to a Premier League football club, and I know that they are as far away from a not-for-profit as you can get. But they're a really good example of an organisation that's trying to do carbon capture data. And none of their systems have got any capability of capturing carbon data. The best we can do is give them their units for purchases of electricity, gas, food, oil, etc., etc. It's a whole list of things that UEFA determine they must capture. But where we actually store that is has yet to be determined. We're not really sure. They're going to have to go away and create fields in their underlying finance system to store those units so they can report them.
That's not Sage, just to say.
It's not Sage, no. I'm hoping it might be soon, but no, it's not. Yeah. It's another system completely, but I can't tell you what it is. But yeah, that's an example of actually having somewhere to store the data, which ties in with what we were saying earlier. You know, the missing piece of the puzzle is often not financial. You need to capture that data, and you need to make sure where you're capturing it, you've got somewhere to store it, and then if you're going to integrate that, where it's going to go in the underlying system.
I think also, just to finish that point off, it's also about understanding figures, you know, because sometimes you might say your carbon footprint is 0.75. What does that mean?
Yeah.
What? So it's about always having context as well on that missing information.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The next part is really about making regulatory compliance and auditability difficult, because each of those systems have their own requirements, their own legal auditing and things like that. How do you deliver that across those systems and bring it to
I'd like to give you the official response from any firm of consultants you might go and speak to, which is compliance is your problem, not mine. Organisations have to be compliant, not the software. That's the key thing. So the regulatory compliance it's a nightmare, and none more so than in this sector. Who on earth thought SORP 2 was a good idea? I didn't like SORP 1. Why make a sequel? You know, we brought out regulations, and then you've got GDPR, and then there's dozens of other compliance issues that any charity will have. You know, you have your own regulator, then you've got the financial requirements, then you've got, as I say, GDPR. It is about really going back to what we said at the beginning, planning and not doing things for the sake of doing them. Hobby, you know, don't duplicate your CRM data without the consideration of, if I duplicate my CRM data, what is the impact on my GDPR situation? You know, am I moving that data from a system that does allow GDPR compliance into a system that doesn't? You know, there's a regulation in North America that works in the health sector. I can't remember what it's called now. HIPAA, that's it. Thank you. Sage products in North America are HIPAA compliant. That doesn't make the organization HIPAA compliant. But when you're moving that data from an integration point of view, you want to really sort of obfuscate the data, you know, but blank it out. Just move it from A to B. You know, make sure you don't take the key data, don't take the name and address of the patient when you're moving the patient information. Just take the patient number. And then you can kind of be HIPAA compliant because you've just moved a case number, not an individual patient. And that's a real key thing, you know, when we're looking at auditability, when we're looking at accountability and compliance. The first thing is understand where the systems you are integrating can and will have an effect on your compliance. And then making sure that every single workflow is visible from an audit point of view, so you can see what data is being moved. And if an auditor says, I want to see how this transaction got from point A to point B, you know, make sure that you can show how that happened. And it's a real key issue. You know, we're often asked if we can do stuff with the data before it goes to where it's going. And my biggest question when we're asked to do that is, what's the compliance issue? Don't ask me to change the tax amount on a purchase invoice when I post it from one system to another. It won't happen. But yeah, compliance and regulatory control is a big issue, particularly in this sector, and it's one that you do have to pay a lot of attention to. So that kind of leads into the finance system, and making sure that your finance systems in and of themselves deliver that compliance and are easy to audit and maintain a good audit trail. But you also need to maintain an audit trail for your integrations as well.
100%. I think the best integrations I've seen is when it's come from another system, the audit record actually holds transferred from system X.
Absolutely.
And this and date and time stamping and the batch number in the other system. So you have the full auditing. I thought
so this came from here in this form.
Correct.
And it ended up there in that form, and in between this happened. And yeah, keep an audit trail. Make sure that the tools that you're using, make sure those tools have an audit trail in there. You know, I said earlier about if you're using a CSV transfer or an SFTP transfer, you know, instead of just deleting that record, move it somewhere safe. That's going to give you more auditability. If you don't move it somewhere safe and you just delete it, make sure you've got a full history of what's come in.
I agree 100%. So thank you very much. Just before we open it up for questions, there's another poll question that you should get. Sorry, I might be rushing because I can't see the poll. The next question is, how many of you do actually have multiple systems that you need to integrate to? So if you just answer, that's a straightforward yes or no question. So just before we open it up, in terms of takeaways from today, I think it's really important that you set and manage those expectations. Sometimes, as Duncan and I were saying, if you talk about these integrations, sometimes people want to, oh, but now I can do this, now I can do that. That's fine, make that stage 2. Your first priority is break it into small bits, make sure they're manageable, and make sure you sell the message internally as well, because it's about managing expectations of others as well. Don't be vulnerable. You know, there are some massive fines out there. You've got enough hard work to protect your own environment without helping bad actors get into the data that wasn't encrypted and things like that. So try and introduce things like two-factor authentications, try and introduce things like SFTP websites and things like that. That's really important as well. Think about the efficiencies, as we've been saying all the way through that. The whole point of this integration, it's to serve an actual purpose. So it's got to deliver you efficiency. It's got to deliver you, productivity issues. You shouldn't have to have somebody sitting there constantly tidying up the data. And again, be very mindful that there's more to it than just the money. A lot of the ESG agenda items out there aren't just saying, how much are you spending on X, Y, Z? They want to know, how compliant are you? Are you making sure your staff are all trained up to the right standards and things like that? And the graphic I chose on the right was deliberate, because it was like, yes, you can bring a lot of your systems together, but there'll be a couple of systems that it just makes no sense bring them together. It's a 5-minute journal that I can just upload. And, that's the more economic, efficient way. Don't think, as Duncan was saying, you've got to do integration for integration's sake. It's got to serve a purpose. It's got to serve a value, and everybody else should be able to see the value in that as well. But it's always about managing those expectations. So with that, we're going to open it up for questions. Over to you, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, any questions? Have we just delivered a webinar to nobody?
Yep. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes.
Sorry, I had problems with my headset, so sorry about that. I was just talking away and no one could hear me.
You
Yeah,
sat on
we
that
actually did say before we started.
We were panicking, thinking, isn't he there?
Oh dear. So yeah, thank you so much for that really interested, informative session. It was great. Thank you. We've talked so much about integration and yeah, please feel free to ask your questions. So far we haven't got any questions that have been put in the Q&A, but I just have one for you. I'm really interested. What's your best and worst integration experience?
Only one. Only one.
Only one. Yeah.
Well, okay, it'll have to be one of each. I don't have one that is both the best and the worst. I think the best one I had, and I'm trying to think of a best in terms of the not-for-profit sector. And to an extent, this could also be the worst. An organisation who acquired, they actually bought Sage Intacct. And they bought Sage Intacct because it integrates to Salesforce. Salesforce, as you can tell by the name, is a CRM system used for people that sell stuff. This particular organisation was using Salesforce to manage their grants. And we were engaged by Sage because we specialise in integrations of Salesforce outside the norm. And in this case, we were creating suppliers and accounts payable invoices in Sage to settle the grants once they had been approved in Salesforce. Very simple, very straightforward process. But the reason why I say it was a really good example of a good integration project, one of the challenges that this particular organisation had was repeat claims or repeat applications from the same individuals. People trying to put in an application for a grant 4 or 5 times under different names, and they wanted to know how they could put a stop to that. And during the initial discussions, it was a bit of a, well, maybe we could just do it if we could check on the bank account details, because surely if it's the same individual, some of these people are going to be daft enough to try and get that grant paid into the same bank account. So we actually put a check in the system that when we create a new payee, we check the bank account details. We check the sort code first, the account number second, and the name third. And it's amazing how many times we've actually stopped them making a grant payment to the same person twice. So that's an example of a good one. It was bad before we got there because it didn't integrate the way they wanted it to. My examples of worst case, I've come across, I'll give you a couple. One where a company wanted to integrate their online credit card system into their accounting system. They couldn't because their credit card provider has no output file. Just no way of doing it, none at all. So that was a good one. They'd signed up to a contract for that provider. And then another one where we started the conversation and the client said, this is our integration roadmap. We've written it out for you, and provided me with a 36-page document. And I just sat there and said, no, sorry. What bits do you need in here? They had so many applications. It actually went back to rationalizing their tech stack, for want of a better phrase, but rationalizing the applications because they had multiple instances of different CRM systems, for example. And it was just, we were presented with a plate of spaghetti to begin with. And it took a long time to actually unravel that one and get back to the beginning and say, right, where are we? Where do we want to go? And too many people have been involved. There really were too many cooks involved in that particular broth. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a bit of a nightmare, to be honest.
Yes, I can genuinely say the second one was nothing to do with the not-for-profit sector. They were quite a large organisation that should have known better. But by the time we'd got halfway through the proper blueprinting session, they'd got a rational view of where they were going.
Wow. So really just on the back of that, are there any red flags when you should be considering an integration project?
Red flags. Interesting question. Yes, there are. And I think that the first of those red flags is there a value? What's the reason for doing this? Okay. I don't want everybody, I don't want all the attendees here today to go away thinking, right, must go and integrate then. Integration, we'll do it next week. Start by asking the question, what's the value of integration to our organization? There are organizations out there that have integrated because somebody told them to. So first red flag, what's the value? Is there a value? Can I understand that value, and can I put that value on the table? Can I actually quantify that value? And then the next red flag is too many systems. Don't try and integrate all of your systems all in one go. Yes, have a roadmap. Even when you've got that roadmap, and even when you've worked out your journey, at some point you're going to have to stop and refuel the car. You'll need a comfort break, and you probably want to stop and get a bite to eat. So, understand the journey and break that journey up, because if you try and do it all in one go, you will fail. The phrase that was used earlier was "don't boil the ocean," or "don't eat the whale." Don't try and eat the whole whale. Just do it in bite-sized pieces, and then you will get success. And also, if you do it in small pieces, you actually see value quicker. You see the benefit faster. That gets buy-in, and the more buy-in you get, the more success you'll have.
I also think, just to add to that, when people say one of the red flags is, I just want the two systems integrated.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, in what context and for what purpose? Well, that's your job. You're the specialist. You get on with it. And it's like, but what were you hoping to get out of it? And they don't, well, you're the expert. Get on with it. And that to me is
that's
and I have had that happen to me.
Huge red flag, Hobby. Well, what do you want to do here? How do you want it to work? I don't know. You tell me. Well, I can tell you the art of the possible. I can help you understand what you can do, but you've got to help me understand what you need to do or want to do. If you don't do that, then clearly you don't need to integrate.
Yeah. I also had a situation where somebody said, I want these two systems integrated, but the other person didn't want to share their information to get integrated.
Yeah.
So I ended up sort of saying, well, you guys need to have that discussion internally first before I can get the two systems to work. It's not my job to negotiate, who does what. You've got to have that conversation internally first.
You have a small problem in a not-for-profit, particularly if you've got a trading arm that's doing web sales, e-commerce sales, or even running a shop. If the people doing that don't want to share their data with the finance team, you have got a problem.
Exactly. Yeah. So there are some red flags there.
Any more, Elizabeth?
Okay. Yes. Well, I've actually had two questions submitted to me directly. So if you don't
Excellent.
mind,
Thank you very much.
I will ask those. And if anyone else would like to ask your questions, now is your chance. So we talked about the pitfalls.
Yes.
What would you say are the best practice tips when it comes to integration?
I would say, alongside careful and diligent planning, constant and regular review. Where are we at? You would be amazed how many times we sit down, having gone through the initial planning stage with the client, and we work out exactly what everybody has agreed on. We're all agreed this is the right thing to do. And we deliver the integration solution, and the client starts doing a bit of UAT and says, see this 900-pound gorilla sat behind me? I forgot to tell you about that. So again, a good example of that that comes out through the review process. I've been doing a lot of work recently with the recruitment sector as well as not-for-profit. And the number of companies in the recruitment sector that now want to get so granular They look at everything by placement number, which is basically when Holly gets her new job, how much money do they make from Holly getting a new job? It's really, really key to keep reviewing, constant review. And I guess that's true not just for an integration project, but for systems as a whole. We're living in a time when things are changing so quickly, we almost don't see the change happening. We become reactive to it, and we become reactive to it because it's happened. Try and take some time out from your day-to-day operations to look at what is happening in your organization and how that impact, or how that will impact, your systems as a whole. Try and take a holistic view of your use of computers. I try and avoid using the word systems, but try and take a holistic view of your business applications, everything you're using on an IT side, and look at how change can impact that or will impact that, and where that might lead to needing to do more on an integration side. So again, I'm trying to work to examples. A client of ours recently that asked about implementing a new mobile app that they wanted. And they were about to sign a contract for this new mobile app because it meant they could store loads of data. But where are they going to put it? Because actually, for them to use that data, it either needed to be on the mobile device or somewhere in the cloud where they could access it. And the people selling the mobile app said, you know, it's great, we just stick it in the cloud. Well, you can't stick this data in the cloud because it's got patient information in it. So that's not going to happen. So constant review, that I would say is the key thing. Plan it properly and then constantly review, make sure that you're on track, you're working to plan, and review the plan, and if necessary, refine the plan. That answers the question. I don't know who asked the question, but is that a...
Well, I think that's quite a comprehensive answer. So thank you very much. I would keep with that. And our last question is, do you ever get caught with different standard of integration between different systems?
Yes, frequently. We often come across cases where, as I said earlier, the data source is not aligned with the data target. That's quite frequent. We have come across systems where data in one system, in the originating system, what I call the originating system, the source system, data in the source system gets written to the target system. It then gets amended in the source system, and those changes aren't written to the target system. That's a common issue that we come across, where people haven't actually thought it through. You do have to be very careful with changes to data and those standards between one system and another. We get a source system that has a field for the account number, for example, which is alphanumeric. The target system, it's only a numeric field. So what do we do with that? And there's a bit of planning and thinking that needs to go around with that, and using the right tools to perhaps transpose the data or transform the data as it goes through. You'll often hear people talk about extraction and transformation, and that's really the key. But yeah, understand the data, where it's coming from, where it's going to, and understanding the format of that data as well. And if necessary, creating somewhere for it to go in the target system.
Just to add to what Duncan was saying, I think the other thing you need to factor in there as well is, you know, again, we're talking about the integration as being a point in time. A lot of systems get upgraded, new fields will be added. So sometimes when you think about the integration, like with Sage, a lot of our partners, like Duncan, gets access to early releases. So if we're releasing a new module, new fields and things like that, they can actually already build the code in to allow for that new feature to be taken on. And then any of our customers that are using Sage with any one of our products, if they upgrade, they get that upgraded feature bundled in Now, that's just the way Sage works, but there's a lot of other companies out there. No, sorry, you've got to rebuild that integration. You've got to have a dedicated way that needs to work. So it's not just a standard one-off integration. It's also an ongoing, every time you get an upgrade to any one of those key solutions in that integration, you do need to make sure you revisit them as well and make sure you're getting what you were hoping to get out of it.
Yeah.
And again, checking. The reason a lot of our partners get access to Sage early is to make sure that integration that they're built will continue to work with the next release, and they get 3 months access to it before us as general public get access to it.
Any others? Any more slipped in at the last minute, Elizabeth?
No, we've got no more last minute questions, and we are running out of time, so you've timed it perfectly. And thank you very much, Duncan and Hobby. It's been so interesting. And just to remind everyone that this session is being recorded. We will be uploading it to watch on demand within a week's time. Together with the slides, the resources will be made available to you very soon. And please don't forget to give us your feedback as well before you go. And yeah, thank you so much for a fantastic session. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you. Goodbye now.
Thank you.